Hi there. In today's video, I'm going to talk about the new Easy35 scanning system made by VALOI. I'm not going to talk too much about the actual workflow of how to scan your film with the Easy35 because I've covered how to scan your film with a digital camera in a previous video where I talk about the VALOI 360. And in terms of the actual workflow, not too much has changed. So once you have the files on your SD card and you import them and you convert them in Negative Lab Pro and all those things, that all stays the same. So just like the 360, the Easy35 has a light source, a diffuser that evenly spreads out the light, and a film holder where the film is held in place. And I'll talk a bit more about the film holder at the end of the video. There are two controls. One is simply for the power, which switches on the light source, and then you can adjust the illumination, how strong it is. And the other one just controls the temperature of the light. So it's either going to be warmer or colder light. It has a USB-C charging port, and it can be used while it's charging, and that's really practical. According to VALOI, a fully charged Easy35 should last around 2 hours though, so that's plenty of time to get a lot of scanning done. Now obviously the big difference to the 360 is that with the Easy35 you don't need a tripod or a copy stand or anything complicated to mount your camera. You don't even need to make any adjustments to make sure that everything is in focus and all the angles are correct and things like that. If you remember in the 360 video, I was using a mirror to make sure that my focusing plane was perfectly parallel to my sensor and all those things, and all of that falls away with the Easy35. The Easy35 attaches directly onto your macro lens, and therefore it acts like a light box, and all you need to do is push your film through. This means your film is always perfectly flat when it's being scanned, and the focusing plane can't really adjust in an awkward way because it's always just attached directly to your lens. The Easy35 comes with a wide array of different distance tubes, which means that it doesn't matter what kind of macro lens you're using. Depending on the focal length, you might need to correct or you might need to adjust the amount of distance tubes that you're using. So for example, I'm using a 70mm macro lens. Some people have like a 90, some have 100, some have 55. It depends on your make. And so all you need to do is find the right amount of distance tubes that you need to use. But you'll find more information on that in the quick start guide, which comes with the Easy35. Another cool feature is that you can mount a duster just like with the 360. Basically, this means that as you push the film through, you have any dust that's sitting on the film that's going to be wiped away. Also, since the Easy35 is kind of like a closed system, what it means is that if you are working with your film or you have a lot of films lying around or something, you don't have to worry too much about dust settling on the film. Now, obviously you should always work in a relatively dust-free environment, but this just kind of means that, you know, even if it's summer and the window is open or something, or it's windy, or you're outdoors because you're doing this on the go somewhere, then you won't have to worry too much about dust settling onto the film directly. And it just makes sure that the whole environment is always kind of dust-free. Even if you just store it somewhere, you don't have to make sure that it's like packed carefully or anything like that. Now, what I personally really like about the Easy35 is that the workflow is really intuitive. It's as close to taking photographs as anything else because you literally just have the camera there. And since you don't need a tripod or anything, all you need to do is feed your film and just take photos. So here's a quick run through of some of the things that I would like to share with you that are some tips that I think could be very practical in order to make the workflow with the Easy35 even better. So top tip number 1, don't cut and sleeve your film before you've scanned it. That means you'll save a lot of time. So if you get your films developed in the lab, make sure you tell them not to cut them and to sleeve them. Now place your camera horizontally on a table or firm ground. I wouldn't recommend using a tripod or anything to balance the lens to essentially what you don't need to do is like have a tripod mount here and then another mount here and then kind of have it floating in the air. Like that's kind of very complicated and you really don't need to do any of that. Some of the things that you definitely shouldn't do is have the camera stand vertically, like in either way, because you'll probably get just some focus shifts. And I remember I had like a Canon, was it 24-205, and that was like really notorious in just the zoom just falling down by itself, like zooming out by itself, or zooming in actually, if I would tilt it forward, because the gears or the lens was just like way too slippery, and that was really annoying, especially when you're filming or you're trying to like balance the camera in a specific way. Next up, switch on the Easy35 by rotating the power light all the way. Make sure that it's fully on in order to have the maximum illumination, so you also don't have to use slower shutter speeds. The light temperature isn't 100% crucial, but I do follow the recommendations made by VALOI. That means for color negative, you want to have it on the coldest setting. For positive and slide film, you want to have it on the warmest setting. And then for black and white, you want to have it on a sort of middle setting. Now, obviously, the middle is something you're going to have to work out yourself. There isn't actually like a dial that says you're exactly perfectly in the middle. So that's why I said you don't have to be 100% accurate. Then definitely use cotton gloves when handling your film. There's nothing worse than a greasy fingerprint on a portrait or something like that. And one thing that I like to do is I just like to take one of these anti-static cloths and just like wipe the film down once. That makes it a bit less susceptible to dust settling on it. And yeah, once the film has been inserted into the Easy35, make sure that you focus with a really wide aperture, and only then you should stop down. That makes it a lot easier to just focus on the grain. Obviously, the ideal aperture depends on your lens. Usually it's something between f5.6 and f8. Now, if you're very careful and your camera is actually completely flat on the table, you should technically be able to take your exposures just by pressing the shutter button, but I really wouldn't recommend that. There is still some possible camera shake that you could cause. So ideally, what you should do is either use the self timer, which obviously takes a bit longer, or if you have, then a remote, because that just makes the workflow really easy. And that's essentially it. There's really nothing more complicated to it. All you have to do is push your film through and take the photos. What I like about this is that VALOI is making it really more easy and accessible for you to scan your films by yourself at home, and it gives you a lot of control. Some of the things that you kind of have to like live with is if you get your film scanned in a lab, then you just get your scans, and then maybe you wanted things in a different way. And like this, you have a lot of more creative control over your outcome. Now, one of the things that you might have already guessed in the name Easy35 is that it only goes for 35mm film. That means if you want to do medium format or anything bigger, then you won't be able to use the Easy35 for this. Obviously, 35 is only the biggest format that you could use. You could use smaller things like pocket films. You can, I think VALOI mentioned that they're going to make a holder for slides that you can put 50x50mm slides into it. And I think it's 110 format and 127. So obviously smaller than 35 will work, but nothing bigger than 35mm film will work. But to exchange the film holder is really not very complicated. Essentially, there are just a few screws on here that you have to unscrew, and then you slide in the new holder, you take out the old one, and yeah, that's essentially it. So that's the Easy35. There's really nothing more to it. It's just a really simple tool that works really well. And I'm really happy to have one of these actually, because I've definitely started using this in my workflow. So I'd like to give a really big shout out to VALOI, who were so kind to send me one of the Easy35s. And a big thank you to everyone who tuned in. Obviously, if you have any more questions, just feel free to drop me a comment down below or write me on my Instagram @doyoudevelop. All right, well then, thanks for watching. Take care and see you next time. Bye.